Gonna have to do a little plug for these Harbor Freight Bauer brand tools. You know, you don't hear people doing that often, and I think they're kind of underrated. I've got a bunch of them now. I have them scattered all over the place. I have them up at the other shop. I have them upstate. I have them in the truck. And what happens is I had gotten to the point where I might need one, and it was in one of my other shops. So I didn't have it, so I just buy another. So I've got like 3 of those small impact drivers, 2 or 3 of the drills, several of these lights. Man, they're so handy. My God, they're handy. You know, I got a couple of those reciprocating saws. In the first one I had purchased was that 1/2-inch impact driver that goes up to about 300, maybe 400 foot-pounds of torque. And I was using that for taking tires off a trailer at the time, but also ended up using it to take a tire off tractors and just all kinds of things. And just used it the other day for changing a tire on a trailer. It sits in the back of my car with a whole bunch of the different sockets, the impact rated sockets, and it just gets used all the time. Also, I went and got a whole bunch of batteries. I've got 5 amp hour batteries and 3 amp hour batteries, and these were on sale a little while back, so I got a bunch of these. You know, sometimes just that 1.5 amp hour battery they have here is all you need, and it's lighter, so there's an advantage. And when I really need to go for a period of time and I want to change batteries, that 5 amp hour, it goes for about an hour or so before flat out for an hour or so before it loses charge. I've kind of settled on, every time I see these 3 amp hour batteries on sale, I grab them because it's kind of a nice mix. And I've used them a lot. I've got probably 5 or 6 of them. But what a deal. And the angle drill, I've used that now for wiring. Again, the reciprocal saw, variety of construction projects, but also a couple of disassembly type projects where I cut a trailer up, haul off the scrap, and used one of those drills to grind the paint off a trailer to repaint it. Did a video on that. I just did battery dumps, just kept going after it until the paint was gone. I was thinking that the poor drill would be dead too, but it survived. There it is. But I'm a fan. Man, they're a good deal for the money. And I've had extremely good luck. And if I didn't, you wouldn't see that pile of red right there. Yeah, I got one of those too. That works pretty good. It sits in the truck, and here's another one of the drills. This one with a 3 amp hour battery. I've been using that when I'm doing muffler mods and some other reasons to grind things that you can figure out. It works good. This one's got a fair amount of time on it too. Pretty much all of them get used, and that's what happens with me is like I said, I have them scattered all over the state. You know, I got some in the truck that are more oriented towards doing homeowner type repairs, household type things, plus the impact wrench for tires, for tire changes, that sits in the truck. And then the uphill shop has got impact drivers and drills and stuff like that. Of course, this shop has got the same, and just had good luck with them. So back to the saw. I did a video where I basically figured out what was wrong with that one set of cases. I don't know where I put them. They're around somewhere. Oh, they're over there. And what had happened was pretty much common to some of the saws in that era. I don't know what it was, and I know people are going to argue about it, but my experience, the only thing you can do in this game is relay what happened in your world and not listen to a whole lot of what happened in somebody else's world, because secondhand information to me is basically crap. Hearsay. So I've made a point of only reporting what I've seen and not, I'm not putting too much into that. It's just as what I've seen. It could be a sample of 10, but it's 10 that I've actually seen. That's the point. And I've seen those cases rattle apart before. And I came to the conclusion years back that part of the reason why Husky went to the nylon cage bearings is to try to fight some of the vibration issues they had, the high frequency stuff that they may have had. And of course, that's pure speculation, so some people will just see that as pure bullshit too, and it could be. And I've had 3 XPWs with steel cage bearings, 2009 era, come through the shop where with a lean condition, had the screws coming out of the case. They were steel cage bearings, but it had that larger 51.4 millimeter piston, and the cases were coming apart. One of them I actually did a video on years back when I had found one of those XPWs that had the label of 375, because originally they called them that, you know, before they called them an XPW. And I was trying to get that saw, you know, in original condition until I split it apart and realized that, you know, it had been run long enough with the cases apart that it just ruined everything. You know, just vibrated everything. I can't imagine how they did that, but I did a video on that years back. I was very disappointed. And I've seen a couple more come to the shop. And granted, yeah, they earn money. It's not like they did it coming out of the dealer, so maybe it's inaccurate to call it a problem because they've run a service life. But it is accurate to say that when they were getting towards the end of their service life, what killed them was the cases rattling apart. How's that? That'll make people a little happier. I've seen the same thing with the 575s. This is the second or third just this last year. And if you look back in the videos, I think I found another one like that. But I've seen them in the past. It's not new for me. And I've had 576s with screws rattle out too. One I did a video on where the screw backed out and tried to destroy the little generator underneath the flywheel. That was, I don't know, a few years back. It was actually a new saw. It's just what I've seen on those. But I haven't seen them recently. I haven't seen that kind of thing recently. So on the new saws that Husqvarna sells, I think they've figured out how to mitigate those issues, and it could be a combination of things. I'm sure it is. But suffice to say that I haven't had one come through the shop with those kind of issues in quite some time. So I think the issues have been solved. The things that will kill them are the things that will kill any saw. But anyway, back to this. Husky sold the 570 with that smaller bore for quite some time after they quit selling the 575. And I wonder if part of the reason why this one was more reliable was, yeah, obviously a smaller bore makes less power, but also maybe a lighter piston doesn't vibrate as much. And the bottom ends didn't have the same problems that the 575 had, you know, that gave them a bad reputation. And again, speculation, but sometimes, you know, empirical data like this, they made these for a long time. They have a fairly good track record in terms of reliability. It's just they're a little underpowered for the weight, so they're not popular with the pro. But as a design, I can't fault the 570. Not really. A lot of teething issues with the cases on the 575, and that's what we're addressing now. So I was actually really, you know, on the fence of whether or not I build it as a 575 or go back and find a 570 smaller bore piston to stick in this cylinder right here. And I may do that with the other cases, but, you know, because we're all about power and all that kind of crap, I decided to go with the 575 larger bore. I don't think the saw is going to get run enough to run into the vibration issues. And also, since I do what I do by effectively gluing those screws in with 1184, I don't think it's going to have an issue. I really think that that's going to be a solid saw. It'll be a saw that'll run longer than the person who owns it, namely me, has a desire to run it. Which brings another point, because we have so many saws, a saw like this is simply not going to get the kind of hours that a professional level logging saw might get, where it gets run several hours a day, every day for, you know, a work week over a period of time. You know, we've covered this before, but a true professional level logging saw just gets so much more time than any hobbyist saw, any race saw. that it's really not a comparison. It's not something that people can use and say, oh, because it failed in the logging environment, it's going to fail in my firewood operation. You know what I'm saying? Completely different levels of hours and time and use. So this saw here will be a firewood saw at best, and probably a get-together saw for me to play around with. Nothing that's just going to get a lot of time. So it'll be fine. Either way, I need to get this thing together and see if I can get a test fire so I can close off the assembly part of this project. And I guess where I was on this one was I had identified the problem with the saw that I was running and was taking bits and pieces off that saw and wrapping it around the set of cases I just finished putting together. If you remember, you watched all the videos, I did a compression test on this saw and it sat around 130 pounds. And that's low for me. I want to see these things around 150, 160 at a minimum. No more than 180. There's sort of a sweet spot in there where you get some efficiency gains over possibly a stock saw. There's a lot of people who just simply don't understand why you do compression. You know, they get balled up into, oh, it's harder to pull over or this and that, or they've had problems and don't understand why and blame it on compression. There's a lot of people out there learning real time, which is good. But the reason why you do compression is simply because of math. You're increasing the efficiency of the burn in a way that's actually measurable. Too much of anything is a problem, so it's finding a blend of compromises that works for you. And for my work saws, for my work, and the people who I do things for from time to time, that 160 to 175 range seems to work, where it's a blend of getting the efficiency that I'm looking for, right? Let me start by getting this piston on. Now, like any other piston, you got to make sure you put it on the right way. And usually there's an arrow pointing that way for the exhaust, and believe it or not, this one doesn't have a freaking arrow. But it's an X-Torque, so you can see these grooves in the side of the piston. See how that is a little bit accelerated on the wear side, even though they've got a lot of bearing surface. That's pretty typical of a strato saw. I'm not going to worry about it on this saw, but there really isn't an easy way for me to unstratify these things because of the way they've got the direct air coming through to their own ports. Now with the X-Torques, it's pretty darn easy. We've done that over and over again, right? But with these, you just got to live with it. There's not much you can do about it. Which, by the way, is one of the reasons why, of the saws to modify, the 575 and the 576, people will do some tweaks like I do. You know, you can change the port timing a little bit to move the RPMs up. I don't recommend it, but you can. And you can widen the ports in certain places to make them flow better and get power at specific RPMs you might be shooting for. But really, they, other than changing the compression a little bit and changing the muffler to actually flow a little bit, there's not a lot you want to do with these things. Just run them. The Husqvarna OEM parts, the OEM wrist pin bearings and wrist pins and things like that, they're usually like really good. Unless that motor got run without oil, chances are just using a stock wrist pin and wrist pin bearing that came out of the saw when you're doing a change to the top end, just leave it. If you get a new one in the kit, fine, but I wouldn't go nuts trying to change them because they're probably fine. And on these, the theory is that little hook part either facing up or facing down, but not to the side. And on these, I have them facing down. what I do is there's a cutout on the piston that allows you to get access. Is I put that on whatever the other side of that is. So for example, the cutouts on the top, I put the heavy part on the bottom. I had a birthday present which I received and executed on. Kind of unusual. I'm not sure I should put it on video, but someone gave me a trip to a concert, country music concert. And you'd think that an old rock and roll type person like me would not be as interested in that, but actually I am. And the artist was Chris Stapleton. And let me tell you what, they put on a good show. That was a very, very good show. I would highly, highly recommend it if you kind of like country music, southern rock style. You'd like Chris Stapleton's concert. And man, the fans, they were into it. All right. So, moving on. Put a little bit of grease in here. I know some people don't, but I do. So I'll get some on the inside of the worm gear. Get a little bit of grease on the threads of the worm gear. You know, like I said, it can't hurt. I'm not sure it's the definition of win all the time, but I don't think it's going to hurt anything. Here's what I'm missing. It needs a sleeve. Space it up. Now I can put a worm gear in there. I definitely set some grease on the bearing surface there. Let me just see if that's the right bearing. It is. So I'm going to leave that off until I get the rest of the chain brake on. Now these guys here are a little bit different than 372. Basically what you have to do is this has to go through the slot in the handle, and then that has to, the hole has to go over that little pin, and the rest of this is just pretty much push it in there. And I'm going to leave that for now. Make sure that seats all the way down in. Make sure this is, there's usually little bumps right there. You got to make sure that that chain brake goes down in there far enough. Alright. So next is that little spring. Where the heck is it? There's one around here somewhere. Alright, let me see if I can get this to go. So I had to put that little piece of plastic underneath there. So I did. Snapped it right in. So I'm going to bulldog in this again. Came out. The black square piece goes up against the little cam, and the spring goes up against the case. See if I can do this without launching it across space and time. Then I stick the screwdriver in one or two coils back, actually one coil back. I make sure the handle is as far back as it can. That's what it's supposed to look like. Cam, little plastic piece goes right there. The spring pushes up against the case. And then I'm going to try to bulldog this in instead of using my special tool. Usually I can do these. They're not as tight as some. Of course, I don't want to get grease all over my pants and stuff, so I will do like this. And then also, if I happen to mess up and things spring out, the towel will keep it from going across time and space again. Now, quickly. Do not pass go. Get this thing on. And you got those little tiny screws to hold that on. I think that's kind of chintzy. It's my humble opinion. I'm sure Husqvarna doesn't agree with me, but I think it's kind of chintzy to have those little tiny screws in there. Get these shouldered here, and they hit on that steel cap in there. It's almost like a bearing surface. Put one on the other side as well. Crank them down. Now, we've worked on some other issues here now, long enough that I think that cylinder, I can crank it down. You know, I think I can put some torque in those things now. They'll seal up tight. I have a sprocket that looked pretty good. Yeah, that looks good. Let's put that on. Get this on. Just going to run a standard 7-pin 3/8. Look at that. Alright, I got to go backtrack just a little bit and get this off. Torque that flywheel nut. Didn't do that. All right, that's 26 foot-pounds right there. See if that shows. And that's how I do it. This torque wrench was a present for me, and I was building a motor for somebody, an outboard, and they were grateful. And said that the biggest issue I'm going to have with those outboards is like on the exhaust cover plates is getting all those things torqued properly, because there is a positive and negative on that. There is a number that works and one that doesn't. You got to get them right or they flex. So this appeared in my truck, and I was able to use this to torque those screws on the exhaust cover plates on that Johnson 70 horsepower motor that I put together a couple of years back, and then the second one I did this last year. Well, I guess it was a year ago now. I did the second one of those. Man, those things are good. Those are good motors. You know? What do we have here? We have the need for a muffler. Like I said, I'm going to take the worst of the two and stick it on there. And they're both pretty bad. This one's beat up more than this one. Get that screen out of it. All right, we continue. Fortunately for me, I don't have to waste a perfectly good muffler gasket on this temporary solution here. And got one right here. Don't know how good it is, but it was on one of these saws. I want to do too crazy until I get these other two in. There we go. Leave it at that. Leave that there too. Oh man, look at this. This is a M6. It almost is like I've done this before. I'm gonna run it right down in there. I'm not going to even drill it out because it's so old out that I'm not even sure that a drill would make any difference at all. There we go. Now we're getting into some meat. See if that gives me enough. Yep, there it is. That's the right one. So for the most part, we have this thing together, right? Need a couple of these on. Get the handle on it and see if it fires up, and then I'll worry about the straps. Because I actually had two things I wanted to do today for the channel. One of them was to get this one fired up and running. And the other was to take apart that other set of cases so you can see how that's done. This is the bar and chain that was on the saw that I had running. It's really not in that bad shape. I'm just going to leave it right be. One more thing for this video. Now it'll be really interesting if it can draw that gas up. That'll be good, right? That's a good sign. All right, let me see if it restarts. If it does, we have a chainsaw. At least we have something to work with. All right. Let's see if I can get my glasses on. Need a little more on the bottom, is my thinking. All right, that's quite a bit more. Let's see what that does. I believe that we do have a running saw here.